Think you know what lurks in the depths of the ocean? While nearly 95% of our oceans haven't been explored yet, it's hard not to let your imagination run wild. But thanks to brave explorers, deep-sea cameras, and awesome archaeologists, we do know about some pretty incredible sea creatures living in our waters today, and millions of years ago. From the 9-foot spider crab to the 60-foot prehistoric Megalodon, these sea dwellers come in all shapes and sizes. But let's focus on sea creatures famous for their huge size. Can you guess which living species of whale is the largest? Well, it's not the orca, but that's a good guess. The orca is a toothed whale that can grow to anywhere from 23 feet to 32 feet, which is slightly smaller than a school bus. How about the narwhal? Nope, they're not the biggest either. These unicorns of the sea live mainly in Arctic waters and only grow 13 feet to 20 feet in length, and that's including their 9-foot tusk. Tired of guessing? Okay, I give in. The largest whale that still exists today is the blue whale. At a jaw-dropping 82 feet to 105 feet, the blue whale is not only the biggest whale we know of, but is currently the largest animal to have ever lived on Earth. Seriously. These animals are bigger than a T-Rex, and even the prehistoric Megalodon. If you were to put a blue whale next to a school bus, it would look like it could swallow it. Think about that. According to National Geographic, a blue whale's tongue can weigh the same as an elephant, and their hearts can weigh as much as a car. That doesn't even sound possible. It's no wonder these giants need to eat about 4 tons of krill every day. While there aren't too many animals living today that can compete with the blue whale's epic proportions, there is an entirely different species that is a good contender, and it's not quite what you would expect. It's a jellyfish. No, I'm not talking about the little jellyfish that wash up on the shore and ruin a perfectly good day at the beach. I'm referring to the lion's mane jellyfish, the biggest jellyfish around. This invertebrate can grow up to 120 feet long. They also come in different gorgeous colors like red, purple, or even shades of orange. As if their length wasn't impressive, the lion's mane jellyfish boast a whopping 8 sets of 70 to 150 tentacles. That means they can have up to 1,200 in total. And here's the giant oceanic manta ray, the largest type of ray in the world. Their wingspan can be longer than a bus. These guys can reach 30 feet in length. They also have the biggest brain compared to body size among all fish. Unlike their stingray cousins, mantas don't have venomous tails. And while the lion's mane jellyfish and the blue whale are yet to be beaten for the longest sea creature, there is one marine creature that can grow even larger in length. The Portuguese Physalia physalis, tentacles and all, can reach a length of 165 feet long, and that's according to mentalfloss.com. While this thing may look a lot like a jellyfish, it's actually known as a siphonophore, and there are hundreds and sometimes thousands of them that are genetically identical. Their long tentacles help the organism catch prey, and its sting is fatal to most animals, even humans in some cases. What's even creepier is that if one of the tentacles comes off the organism for whatever reason, it can float around the water for days before decomposing. Even if it's detached, this tentacle can still sting you. But don't go running out of the ocean just yet. Your chances of being hurt by a Portuguese Physalia physalis sting are pretty slim. However, if you do get stung, the side effects aren't pretty, with welts, stomach cramps, an elevated heart rate, and an upset stomach. While you don't want to go anywhere near these long creatures, they sure are pretty to look at. Check out all those colors. The Shastasaurus is the biggest marine reptile that has ever existed. These predators lived during the late Triassic period, about 210 million years ago. These amazing giants could reach lengths of up to 69 feet and weighed more than 75 tons. This made the Shastasaurus as heavy as a blue whale. And if you could stand this creature up vertically, it'd be as tall as a 7-story building. Despite appearances, the Shastasaurus was actually pretty slim for its size. Its ribcage was only 6 feet across. You'd think that this big guy was chowing down on other dinosaurs, but that's not the case at all. This reptile survived on a diet that consisted of small fish and cephalopods, like octopuses and squids. The Albertonectes is a bright representative of the plesiosaur family, meaning that this marine reptile had a small head on an incredibly long neck and large flipper-like limbs that helped it move through the water. These creatures occupied the seas around North America 76 to 70 million years ago. The length of this sea monster could reach 38 feet, with its neck taking up 23 feet of that length. Its neck was a true record breaker. It had a whopping 76 bones in it. No other animal known to humankind has had so many vertebrae in its neck. Scientists aren't sure why they needed such a lengthy neck. They might have used it to collect shellfish off the seabed, or perhaps it helped them capture their main prey, fish and squids. This aquatic reptile also had gastroliths in its stomachs. Some of them were as big as 5.5 inches in diameter. The Tylosaurus belonged to the mosasaur family. It dominated the shallow seas of North America about 85 to 80 million years ago. This was an enormous predator, with the biggest representatives reaching 45 feet in length. It had a narrow hydrodynamic body with a blunt, powerful head that the animal used to ram and stun its prey. Its body was equipped with agile flippers and a long tail decorated with a maneuverable fin. The Tylosaurus was a carnivore, and its diet included not only fish, turtles, and small sharks, but also other mosasaurs, plesiosaurs, and flightless birds. Meet Ophthalmosaurus. This prehistoric reptile thrived during the late Jurassic period and lived in oceans all over the world. Ophthalmosaurus weighed somewhere around 6,000 pounds and grew to approximately 16 feet long, according to newdinosaurs.com. That's about the same length as the beluga whale that exists today. It's too bad these guys went extinct before we had a chance to see them ourselves, as their cartoonish wide eyes and dolphin-like features are pretty darn cute. Of course, the Ophthalmosaurus evolved over time to become ophthalmologists, or eye doctors that we know today. No, that's just a lie. Just testing you. The Mosasaurus is a truly gigantic predator that dominated the seas all over the world about 66 million years ago. According to fossil evidence, some specimens could be more than 50 feet in length. This fact makes the Mosasaurus the biggest marine carnivore of its time. One of the most terrifying things about this creature was its crocodile-like head, decorated with literally hundreds of razor-sharp teeth, neatly organized in 2 rows on both jaws. The thing is that it was pretty challenging for the Mosasaurus to grab its prey in the water. That's why it had all these teeth, plus something special: pterygoid teeth anchored to the bones on the roof of its mouth. This made hunting and holding onto its prey much easier. The Styxosaurus belonged to the plesiosaur family and lived during the late Cretaceous period, around 85 to 70 million years ago. Upon first glance at this dinosaur, you might mistake it for a sea snake, and it'd be an honest mistake. Styxosauruses were about 35 feet in length, but over 16 feet of that consisted just of their long snake-like neck. They had a comparatively small body and weighed approximately 4 tons. Their mouths were full of razor-sharp cone-shaped teeth that they used to catch fish. They didn't need to chew their prey, thanks to the 200 small stones called gastroliths in their bellies that probably aided in digestion. At the same time, some scientists believe that the Styxosaurus used these stones to sink to the ocean bottom in search of particular types of fish. Looks kinda like Nessie to me.
It was the largest fish our Earth had ever seen, and its bite was strong enough to crush a car. The largest of its teeth found was the length of a remote control. It consumed about 2,500 pounds of food a day. That's like 3,300 cans of tuna for you. The earliest Megalodon fossils are from about 20 million years ago, but you won't see its skeleton, and that's because the mighty Meg had no bones. A skeleton made from bones gives most animals their body shape and strength. Sharks, though, come from the same subclass as rays, skates, and sawfish and have cartilage instead of bones. Cartilage is a tissue that is softer and more flexible than bones, but it's still tough enough to shape the body and protect the internal organs. Some areas are more flexible since cartilage is weaker, and some, like the shark's head, are much tougher thanks to calcified cartilage. Their snouts, though, are made of really soft and flexible cartilage to work like a bumper in case of a collision with some dangers. Who knows if they'd be able to do all this with a heavy skeleton? Plus, cartilage makes their jaws more flexible, and they can open their mouths much wider than they would with a jaw made of bone. Our hero, Meg, was no exception, and it had the strongest bite of all living creatures, which was also made possible by a skeleton made of cartilage. Sharks take full advantage of their cartilage. It helps them swim and turn fast while hunting. One drawback of this type of skeleton is that it was really tricky for scientists to establish the shape and size of Meg. Normally, they would do it using fossilized bone skeletons or their parts. With Meg, they had to guess based on the teeth they found and comparisons with living relatives. A more recent 3D computer model was based partially on scans of a preserved spine discovered in the 1860s. The model showed that Meg was bigger, faster, and even hungrier than scientists had previously thought. Looks like an average Megalodon was 52 feet long. That's slightly bigger than the height of the Hollywood sign and weighed 10 times as heavy as an elephant. There were also much bigger creatures. Scientists still aren't sure how the Megalodon got this size. The fact that there were bigger and smaller Megs probably has to do with a little something called Bergmann's rule. It says that the temperature of the surrounding environment affects the animal's body size because they either need to conserve or shed heat. The Megalodons that reached cooler waters probably needed more body weight to make sure they survived in low temperatures. Those living in warmer waters had to be smaller to avoid burning up. If the researchers were correct in their calculations, it also means that Meg reached a cruising speed of over 3 miles per hour, which is much faster than other sharks. The still-living great white shark can cover a distance of nearly 7,000 miles without stopping, which is 9/10 as long as the diameter of Earth. It looks like the Megalodon could have gone much further. Megalodons managed to survive on our planet for nearly 70 times longer than humans have. They were roaming the oceans for around 20 million years, and you could see them pretty much anywhere except near the poles. Scientists discovered the most northern fossils off the coast of Denmark and the most southern in New Zealand. The reason why there were no Megalodon teeth found in Antarctica is most likely that these adapted to only warm tropical and subtropical waters. The younger ones like to keep to the shores, while full-grown adults preferred coastal areas, but they could easily move into the open ocean as well. When our planet went through a period of global cooling and drying, and the seas began to freeze around 3.6 million years ago, there was less and less room for Meg to thrive. Much of their prey, like smaller whales, seals, and sea turtles, disappeared or relocated to waters that were too cold for our hero. And at the same time, the number of its natural competitors, like smaller predatory sharks, like the great white shark, and whales, increased. This shifting food chain dynamics could have been even more dangerous for the Meg than the cold ocean water. You're used to seeing them on the big screen as heartless monsters, but these huge sharks were actually loving and caring family guys. Scientists discovered several Megalodon nursery areas in Florida, Maryland, Panama, and off the coast of Spain. It looks like they gave birth to their young in shallow water environments. Then, little Megs would stay there with adults protecting and raising them until they were ready to fight off predators. The mighty Meg had 276 teeth in 5 rows in its mouth. Similar to other sharks, it was fast in replacing its worn-out or lost teeth. With 4 or 5 rows of teeth in its mouth, it basically acted like a conveyor belt, able to grow back damaged or missing teeth. This means that an adult Megalodon probably would have grown several thousand teeth throughout its lifetime. Although the great white shark is often mentioned as Meg's closest relative, they'd hardly be distant cousins. The ancestors of today's great white existed at the same time as the Meg, but they weren't best friends and even rivaled each other. The great white shark wouldn't win in a head-to-head fight with a Meg, but it was a better hunter using its smaller size and agility to snap up the giant's prey quickly. This only left the bigger fish and whales for the Meg, but its food supplies began to run out as the whales swam to the cooler new seas. Rather than a great white, the Megalodon is more like a modern bull shark. It had a short snout, a flat lower jaw, and huge pectoral fins to support its massive weight and size. We also speak of Meg as an extinct giant, but can we be 100% sure it isn't hiding somewhere as we speak? After all, we've only explored 5% of our oceans altogether. The Mariana Trench is the deepest oceanic trench on Earth, and you could dip the whole of Mount Everest in its deepest part, and over a mile of it would still be above the surface. If a Megalodon or two needed a place to hide, that would be the perfect spot. It wouldn't be the coziest place to live, though, with its cold water and total darkness. Plus, the pressure there is 1,000 times stronger than at sea level. So, if a Meg really were hiding down there, it would have serious issues with its teeth, because calcium would dissolve under that pressure. To survive here, it would also need to learn to navigate in complete darkness. That means it would have either become bioluminescent or evolve to grow massive eyes like the giant squid. If the Meg were still around and true to its dietary choices, it would have to eat smaller fish, and that would be a problem for us humans. Especially those of us who love fish, that is. And the ocean isn't cooling down these days. The Megalodon would love its temperature and would thrive and reproduce faster than ever. Those giants would create some massive problems for cargo ships and cruising vessels. In case you're now scared at the thought of meeting a Megalodon, relax. Most scientists don't think it's possible because of our hero's size. Most foods that Megalodons like to eat live in shallow ocean areas and not in the deep, deep sea. Meg would need to come up for dinner every now and then, and it's kinda hard to miss a creature this big. They're both giant prehistoric creatures to us, but the Megalodons and the dinosaurs never actually coexisted. The dinosaurs probably died out about 66 million years ago. Megalodons seem to have appeared a bit later.
Your heart is racing. You're running for your life from one of the biggest creatures you've ever seen. A giant reptile on two legs, sprinting right behind you. You hear the sound of a raging river next to you, but decide not to jump in. Thick leaves and bushes keep blocking your path, and you keep getting stuck in the mud. Everything around you is out to get you, and there's nowhere to hide. You spot a hollowed-out tree trunk and crawl inside. Whatever's out there is getting closer and closer. You hear deep guttural breathing and huge stomping. It's getting closer. You see a large tail from a crack in the tree trunk, swinging and knocking down bushes and small trees. Whatever it is, it's sniffing you out like those dogs at the airport. And right next to your face are giant bugs the size of a house cat. Perfect. You've always been scared to even look at crawly little things, but this one's so close and so big, you can actually see its facial features. It's looking at you like you're the alien. You want to scream, but can't. Then, out of the darkness, more bugs. They're curious things, flicking their antennas all over your body. Okay, this is too much. A bug is one thing, but now, a giant centipede thing is crawling your way. Its fangs are the size of your thumb. You dart out of the tree trunk and come face to face with a giant monster. It stops and stares at you, knowing you have no place to go. Claws and teeth the size of bowling pins. That's enough to keep you up at night. It's getting ready to charge right at you. Welcome to the most dangerous period and area in history for a human, the mid-Cretaceous Sahara. This place was thriving around 100 million years ago in what would now be North Africa. Back then, the continents were all arranged differently, and the weather was wild. Extreme storms were pretty common, and temperatures would rise and fall like a Mexican wave at a soccer stadium. Then, sea levels started to rise. Water flooded the Kem region, an area between modern-day Algeria and Morocco. Over the next millions of years, asteroids, volcanic eruptions, and other natural disasters wiped out everything else. Bye-bye, dinosaurs. Thanks for playing. You probably think of the Sahara as one of the most inhospitable places on Earth, but back when it had trees and rivers, it was even more dangerous. The famous River of Giants was a huge river system that stretched from modern-day Egypt all the way to Morocco. The land was flat and not much vegetation grew there, but it was enough for life to exist. Frightening, scary life. That creature you're staring at, it's a giant, scary-looking theropod, and it's out to get you. Imagine a T-Rex-like dinosaur that's more than 32 feet tall and has an epic jawline. Scary stuff. They were the top dogs in the food chain back then. And that's why this place and period in history was so unique. The entire area had an incredible imbalance between hungry dinos and poor little dino snacks. There wasn't enough food to go around. Scientists were never able to find much evidence of herbivores. That means it might have been a royal rumble of carnivorous creatures waiting to pounce on each other at any moment. So, after a while of having a stare-down contest with a giant theropod, a shadow creeps up on you from behind. You're too scared to turn around, but the growling is louder than anything you've ever heard. It shakes you to the core. You turn around and see a Spinosaurus, and that's about all you can see. You know how they always show the T-Rex as the king of the dinosaurs? Well, this one would be, what, the emperor? It stands about 50 feet tall and has a sail of scales on its back, the size of a regular human. Then add in a crocodile-style snout with razor-sharp teeth and some short, powerful legs. Its diet mainly consists of river fish, but it's looking at you like you're a delicious fish taco. The two alphas are now in a standoff, with you stuck in the middle. But before you close your eyes and get ready to be eaten, they begin fighting each other, knocking down trees. You tiptoe your way out of there and run. The further you go, the better, right? Wrong. Not here, because everywhere you go, there's going to be something dangerous. During this period, there was danger in the sky, in the water, and on land. There were small mammals scurrying around here and there, but they mostly stayed in the shadows to avoid danger. After 5 minutes of running as fast as humanly possible, you make it out of the forest and onto an open plain. Bad move. Now there's nowhere to hide. Suddenly, you hear another shriek. You look behind you. Nothing. It's just short grass everywhere. Then you tilt your head up to the sky and see what looks like a giant bird. Only these are technically flying crocodiles. There were plenty of huge pterosaurs that ruled the skies. Alanqua saharica was a flying reptile that may have eaten fish in the river. Those fish must have been tasty. It had a huge wingspan and long, slender jaws. Oh, and it was the size of a small bus. This one found you and is racing down to catch you. You run for your life, again. And this time, there's no place to hide. Suddenly, you feel talons grasping onto you and you're lifted off the ground. You soar up. If you weren't scared out of your mind, you might have noticed how beautiful the giant river channels below you are. The Alanqua maneuvers like a fighter jet, headed for the mountains, dodging all obstacles. You see a large nest with some mini beasts in it. They're hungry and as large as you. Not a great combination. You try to break free, but it's impossible. The creature drops you in the middle of the nest and flies off. You try to cover yourself, but the little ones keep pecking away. It's only a matter of time before it's too late. You look down below you and see the river. You can't tell how deep it is, but it's got a really strong current. You're out of options. You dive into the raging river and get dragged along with the current. Safe for now, ish. Imagine it's 2021. You're walking along one of the hottest and driest places on Earth, the middle of the Sahara Desert, only to find fossils of oversized fish. They ranged from bite size to bus size. Even freshwater sharks lived there. These weren't your average little fishies. Judging by their teeth, those guys meant business. You might even find a giant sea turtle swimming around. Okay, back to your wacky adventure. Luckily, you wash up on a safe sandy part of the river where you're able to relax. You drink some river water and try to find a safe place to make camp. Every noise you hear makes you jump. You sit down and try to enjoy the calmness of ancient Earth. Just when you feel you can finally catch your breath, you see a Spinosaurus walking along the river on the prowl. You run off and hide under a bush. It passes you by. You're safe. Or not. It turns, shakes the bushes, and sees you. Just then, a large boom scares it away. It's the sound of you jolting awake. You turn on the light and see your cat staring at you. Those dinosaurs seem so real, probably because of that documentary you were watching right before bed. The entire mid-Cretaceous ecosystem depended on rivers for daily life. Just like all ancient civilizations, rivers were essential for the creatures of the time. And very recently, scientists discovered a new species of snakes that went extinct back then, with no known descendants. To understand these ancient ecosystems, it's important to know a lot about fossils. You might find two different fossils side by side, but those animals might have lived millions of years apart.
Now, dinosaurs ruled our planet for over 165 million years, and some walk on our planet even today. Well, at least some of their descendants. Our modern birds evolved from what used to be a scary group of meat-eating dinosaurs we know as theropods. It all started during the Mesozoic era, about 250 million years ago, when a group of creatures called dinosaurs roamed Earth. They didn't look like those dinos that might have come to your mind, like Brontosaurus or T-Rex, but that's the group dinosaurs evolved from. These creatures walked on all fours and were as big as house cats. They didn't look as friendly, though, considering they were more like weird lizards with long, thin limbs. As you'd expect, this group wasn't exactly at the top of the food chain, but they were really fast and agile, which helped them survive. Over time, they adapted and started walking upright, so their legs were under their bodies instead of out to their sides. And over time, dinosaurs started growing long tails and bigger leg muscles. Their necks became stronger to support the new position they were in, and they even got extra hip bones that helped them move faster and more efficiently. That's when dinosaurs came on the scene, somewhere between 240 and 230 million years ago. Their name comes from the word dinosauria, which means terrible lizard. The oldest dinosaur fossils belong to these fellas that lived in Argentina. This one is even older, but we're still not sure if it's a real dinosaur or its relative, dinosaur morph. Now, considering the size of their ancestors, dinosaurs weren't large at the beginning, more like dogs or horses. There weren't many species back then, so if you could go back to that time, you'd see a bunch of reptiles walking around on two legs. But as time went by, they adjusted to different environments, and we got more interesting groups. For example, small and fast predators, like this guy. They all fall into the category of archosaurs, a group that also includes pterosaurs. Yup, their name may not imply it, but these are not dinosaurs. As some dinosaur morphs evolved into dinosaurs, they got certain advantages, like arms. They could do much more thanks to that. Some could catch prey using their hands. Others could grasp branches. Now, the freedom they got by moving their arms later helped some of them evolve into birds and start flying. Dinosaurs were probably warm-blooded. It means they could stay active all the time. They didn't depend on the conditions around them like, for example, reptiles do. The latter are cold-blooded, and they have to rely on their surroundings to regulate their body temperature. Dinosaurs didn't rule the animal kingdom for the first tens of millions of years of their existence either. Crocs were at the top of the food chain back then. Then the Jurassic period hit, and new kinds of dinosaurs showed up, like those giant plant-eating dinosaurs, for example, sauropods. You know them, dinos with long tails and necks that could eat plants at different heights, such as Brachiosaurus. Allosaurus is another famous dino from that time you will probably recognize. Spikes on the tail, bony plates on the back, you know, good old Stegosaurus. The Jurassic period was that time when dinosaurs started to get bigger and bigger. Then the Cretaceous period came along, and finally, these magnificent beasts reached the peak of their fame. That was the time when the mighty T-Rex took the throne and got to the top of the food chain. T-Rex probably lived around 28 years, but it reached adult size really fast. Now, it wasn't easy to survive back then. T-Rex falls into the category of tyrannosaurs, and scientists have found out those fellas were fierce even when they were at a pretty young age. They discovered a fossil of a teenage tyrannosaur that was 75 million years old, and it had 2 baby dinosaurs inside its stomach. They realized that when tyrannosaurs were at a young age, they went for small dinosaurs, such as these guys, their dino cousins. As they grew older, they started taking on bigger challenges, like those peaceful giant dinosaurs that like to hang out with their group and eat plants. But large predators weren't the only ones that would have made you shiver with fear. That was also the time when fast and smart creatures called velociraptors show up. They weren't some scaly dinosaurs that would catch their prey using those claws in the shape of sickles, like shown in the movies. Their bodies were covered in feathers, and they would grow up to 100 pounds, which is about the size of a wolf. And to bust one more myth, they didn't hunt in packs. Velociraptors probably prefer to hunt solo and use their claws not to slash their prey, but to clutch it. T-Rex and Velociraptor fall into the group called theropods. We mentioned them at the beginning, the creatures today's birds evolved from. But even though velociraptors were covered with feathers, they still couldn't fly. Their wishbones weren't shaped in a way to support flying, and their arms were too short. Maybe it was better that way because during the Cretaceous period, flying dinosaurs called pterodons were the ones that took over the skies. Things had been going really great for dinosaurs until one unfortunate day 66 million years ago when an asteroid hit our planet. It's not that the asteroid itself erased all the dinosaurs right away, but it caused changes in the environment, which made it way harder to survive. At that time, about 75% of animals living on our planet went extinct. The asteroid was really big. When it hit Earth, it created a giant crater in the Yucatan Peninsula and sent a lot of debris into the atmosphere, which blocked the sun right away. For months, dense clouds of dust blocked sunlight. Our home planet was darker and colder than before, which wasn't good for plants. Creatures that ate plants couldn't survive those changes either. So it all turned into a chain reaction when most of the ecosystem collapsed. When the dust finally cleared, all those greenhouse gases that had formed after the impact made temperatures go way higher than they had been in a really short period of time. All land animals that weighed more than 55 pounds were gone. But not everything disappeared. There were fewer plants, but they were less affected than animals, all because their pollen and seeds can survive really messed up conditions for a longer time. So, what we have today is basically the seeds we were left with back then. After the asteroid hit, flowering plants dominated our planet. All non-bird dinosaurs went extinct too. Some species survived as birds. At first, those brave survivors were small, but later, birds evolved to bigger sizes. Now, there's a study that says that if the asteroid had slammed into some other spot on Earth, the fate of many creatures and plants would have been very different. If the rock had fallen maybe a couple of minutes later, it would have hit deeper waters. Less rock would have vaporized and risen to block out the warmth and light coming from the sun. In that scenario, we'd probably still have dinosaurs around. For example, Triceratops was one of the last dinos that had nothing in common with birds. If the asteroid had missed our planet, we would see some of them still roaming around, but since evolution never rests, maybe in a little bit different form.
That award for the smallest heart in the world goes to a fairy fly. It's a little insect that's about as thick as a piece of paper. You'll need a microscope to see its heart. Despite the name, this creature isn't a fly. The fairy fly is actually a wasp. If you ever get a chance to look at one under a microscope, you'll see the resemblance. Moving over to bigger but equally impressive hearts from the animal kingdom. Zebrafish have a very cool ability when it comes to their tickers, which are only about 0.04 inches in diameter. Their hearts can regenerate. If a zebrafish's heart ever gets damaged or has a problem, Most of the time, it can repair itself. Human hearts may be awesome since they continuously try to replace their cells and repair heart tissue, but it's no match for that of the zebrafish. Let's look at cockroaches. Our hearts have 4 chambers, each of them with a designated task. The system can't function without all 4 working properly. The heart of a cockroach has 12 to 13 chambers, which are placed in a row along the length of the insect's body, on average about 1.5 inches. They work separately since they're powered by different muscles. This means that if any of those chambers gets affected, the insect might not even notice. Most of the time, the cockroaches survive without all those heart chambers working properly. A hummingbird's heart can beat up to 1,200 times per minute. The heart of a human athlete might only go as fast as 220 beats per minute. Despite being one of the smallest hearts in the world, that of a hummingbird is quite large compared to the bird's full size. It amounts to about 2.5% of its total body weight. By the way, the blue-throated hummingbird flaps its wings up to 15 times each second. It's so fast that this movement cannot be perceived by the human eye. That impressive speed is backed up by an even faster heart, which beats up to 21 times each second. Ever heard of the emperor penguin? It's not a penguin species that just happens to have a crown on its head, if that's what you're thinking. They are fascinating swimmers that can dive deeper than any other bird, up to 700 feet. Not to mention that they can stay submerged for up to 18 minutes at a time as they gather food. Their hearts are equally as spectacular, weighing somewhere around 5 ounces. Their hearts are very slow. When in the water, an emperor penguin can reduce its heart rate to about 15 beats per minute. It shuts down the blood supply to all but the most vital organs. It also dials down oxygen consumption, allowing the animal to use only what's necessary for deep water hunting. Heart size tends to be pretty proportional throughout the animal kingdom. Most of these organs weigh somewhere around 0.6% of an animal's body mass. Dogs and wolves have bigger hearts by comparison, about 0.8% of the animal's total weight. An average dog's heart weighs about 20 ounces. If a human heart suddenly got filled with fat, it would become a problem pretty fast. But that's very different for a python, though. If that happens to this reptile, it's actually a sign that things are going great. Pythons tend to have really big meals. After each of such meals, their hearts get larger by about 40%. And since a python can weigh as much as 250 pounds, that's a lot. Most of these increases is caused by the snake's heart swelling up because of fatty acids absorbed from the meal. These reptiles adapted to do so to speed up their digestion, even though it still takes them days to process one single meal. Their blood gets so full of fatty acids, it even changes its color and consistency. In some cases, it may even turn opaque, looking more like milk than anything else. Finishing our chart on the other side of the spectrum, the largest heart in the animal kingdom belongs to the blue whale. And for a good reason, since they're some of the largest animals ever. This giant heart is about as big as a bathtub and weighs more than the average gorilla. Regardless of their size, animal hearts are amazing. Us humans and most animals just have one heart, but this rule doesn't apply to all creatures. Take octopuses or squids, which have 3 hearts. This is how their system works. 2 of their hearts help to pump blood to the gills, so they have enough oxygen in their bodies. The 3rd heart pumps blood around the body. Some animals don't have hearts altogether. It doesn't necessarily make them mean, though. Jellyfish, starfish, or corals lead pretty good lives even without hearts. Take starfish, for example. They don't even have blood. That's probably the reason why they don't need a heart either. No list is complete without some amazing facts about the human heart. You don't need to Google it or look for an anatomy book to know how big your heart is. Just squeeze your fingers and make a fist. That's about as large as the heart gets in adults. This amazing organ is responsible for keeping everything active in our bodies. It can beat about 115,000 times every day. Ever watched a cartoon in which the main character's heart just starts pumping out of its chest? Most of the time, we're tricked into thinking that the sound our heart makes is produced when this organ touches the tissue surrounding it when beating. Turns out that this sound is actually made by the opening and closing of the heart valves. They're like small doors inside our hearts that ensure that blood flows correctly from one side of the heart to the other. For our bodies to work, blood needs to move at the right time and in the right direction. Our lungs are not twins, they're siblings, and our heart is the reason. Our right lung is bigger and tends to weigh more, and our heart is to blame. Our ticker tilts to the left a bit. This creates a small indentation in our left lung, which is called the cardiac impression. The right lung may be bigger, but it's a bit shorter since it needs to make room for the liver. Speaking of positioning, our heart is really not as far on the left as we might think. It's actually pretty centered with just a slight tilt to the left. People born with dextrocardia, though, have their hearts positioned on the right side of their chest. This condition, on its own, isn't problematic, but it tends to coincide with other diseases that can have serious effects on the heart and other organs. Do you know most heart attacks happen on Mondays? The reason is still up for debate, but most scientists believe it has to do with the stress of starting a new working week or with the changes in our sleep-wake cycle. You tend to sleep more at the weekend, and waking up earlier on Monday may be detrimental to your heart. Your heart started beating about 4 weeks after you were conceived, and it won't stop until you pass away. Sure, it may get weaker as you grow older, but the heart doesn't get tired. It's a really hard job if you think about it. Try this experiment to test it out. Squeeze a tennis ball in your hand. Your beating heart is about the same force, 100,000 times a day. I bet you'll lose count before finishing. In some cases, the energy our hearts need to carry on pumping is unstable. That's why pacemakers were invented. They act like small generators placed inside the human body. They help with stabilizing abnormal heart rhythms. The first ever device of this kind was put into a woman's body back in 1958. Her name was Arna Larson, and when she passed away at 86, it was because of other issues. It had nothing to do with her heart.
It was a 40 feet long and 12 feet tall beast, the king of dinosaurs. Its massive and muscular body weighed up to 8 tons. Its serrated teeth were sharp, and its jaws had a bite so strong they could crush a car. The creature had 2 powerful legs. It lived in forested river valleys all across North America, almost 70 million years ago. I'm talking about the most famous movie star among dinosaurs, T-Rex. It was very smart, with a brain twice as big as that of any large meat-eating dino. It was slower than other hunters, developing a speed of up to 12 miles per hour. Its other weakness was its small arms. Some scientists think they were just an evolutionary leftover, like the pelvic bones of some snakes. But others believe T-Rex used its arms to hunt. Its 4-inch claws helped the animal out. T-Rex was undoubtedly frightening, but surprisingly, there were even scarier dinosaurs in the past. Around 100 million years ago, there was a giant creature with the name that meant a spine lizard. It was Spinosaurus, the largest carnivorous dino. It was bigger than T-Rex and could grow almost 60 feet long. Its weight could be as great as 22 tons. The animal had long spines on its back. They could grow up to 7 feet long and were connected by folds of skin. They formed something that looked like a sail. Some scientists think it was a hump Spinosaurus used to store water. This dino had dense bones and short hind limbs. Researchers believe that these dinos could use their flat and wide clawed feet for paddling. This was the first dino that could ever swim. Unfortunately, it couldn't process smells like most other theropods. These were a group of two-legged carnivorous dinosaurs that appeared on Earth 230 million years ago. That's why the animals the creature hunted could hide from it on land. The Spino-dino spent most of its time in the water. It roamed the swamps of North Africa and mostly fed on fish, big prehistoric sharks, and sometimes other dinosaurs. It had a long, thin, and narrow snout like a crocodile. Unlike other dinos of its kind, which had curved teeth, Spinosaurus had conically shaped straight teeth. Giganotosaurus, which is the Greek word for giant southern lizard, was considered the largest meat-eating dino until Spinosaurus was found. It lived around 100 million years ago in South America, around 30 million years before T-Rex appeared there. It was longer and taller, but more slender than T-Rex. And while T-Rex had 2 fingers, this giant had 3. It walked upright on its 2 big and very strong legs. Its tail was pointed and thin, which helped the creature make fast turns while running and keep its balance. The animal could move at a speed of up to 31 miles per hour. T-Rex's maximum speed was 25 miles per hour at the most. Any faster than that, and the giant could lose its balance and fall over. Giganotosaurus had 2 arms with sharp claws. It was mostly an opportunistic meat eater feeding on everything it found on its way. Its bite wasn't as strong as T-Rex's, but it still managed to deal with some bigger animals, like herbivore dinosaurs. Maybe there was even an Argentinosaurus among them, the biggest animals ever found. It's hard to imagine how Giganotosaurus could take down a 50-ton beast on its own. That's why scientists think they may have hunted in groups. The animal's only weakness was its small brain. It was twice smaller than T-Rex's. This means the T could at least win a chess game. Big retractable sickle-shaped claws in the creature's feet are great for cutting. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Utahraptor. That's a mini T-Rex that lived 125 million years ago. If a big T-Rex was coming for you, you could hide under a rock or some other place where it wouldn't be able to reach you. But there would be no place where its mini version couldn't follow you. Discovered in Utah, strong, toothy, and armored with huge claws, more than 9 inches long, an adult Utahraptor was 20 feet long and 5 feet tall at the hip. These creatures were covered in feathers. This is why fully grown animals look like gigantic turkeys. The Utahraptor's main weakness was their size. They were a bit smaller than many other dinos, but these guys made up for that by hunting in packs. Allosaurus, which means a different lizard in Greek, was a massive carnivore reaching 40 feet in length and weighing 2 tons. It roamed the Earth around 150 million years ago. Similar to T-Rex, this dino had strong back legs and a large snout. Its mouth was full of sharp teeth. The animal easily lost them when eating, but they usually grew back. Allosaurus was already fully grown by the age of 15, and its lifespan was around 28 years. The creature had a short neck and a long, narrow skull, disproportionately big compared to the rest of its body. This dino also had a pair of horns above its eyes and ridges along the top of its nasal bones leading to those horns. Allosaurus chased big herbivore dinosaurs. When several Allosauruses gathered in a group, they could take down even such colossal creatures as Apatosaurus. But scientists still doubt if they could cooperate, because these dinos were generally not too friendly toward one another. Some of the animal's bones had an hourglass shape, which made them lighter and reduced their strength. They were similar to the hollow bones modern birds have. Another weakness of this dino was its bite. It was less powerful than that of some modern animals, like lions, alligators, or leopards. Scientists think Allosaurus may have used its skull as a hatchet. The Rhizinosaurus was one of the freakiest dinos out there. It lived 100 to 60 million years ago. It had a very small head and bizarre feet with 4 toes, unlike their ancestors that had 3. Its body was covered with feathers. This weirdo had the longest claws scientists have ever recorded. They were 3 feet long each. These claws were curved and sharp. The dino used them to collect plants for lunch. Scientists are still not sure if this creature was a herbivore or carnivore, or both. The dino had a long neck. There were no teeth in its upper jaw. Its wrist bones were like the ones modern birds have. The Rhizinosaurus might have evolved from a meat-eating to plant-eating animal throughout time. Unfortunately, in comparison with meat-eaters, herbivore dinosaurs were much weaker, and still, those claws could make its enemies think twice. High-spined lizard, or a Acrocanthosaurus, lived 110 million years ago. It was 2 feet shorter than T-Rex but had a similar body structure. Like T-Rex's, these creatures often went after bigger and more challenging animals. For example, with those backbones so hard, it seemed as if they were carrying a giant turtle shell, like Ankylosaur. The high-spined lizard was very territorial. It had a brain shaped like the letter S and an excellent sense of smell. What made a Crocanthosaurus vulnerable was its small arms. And still, the creature used them to hunt other animals surprisingly well. The dino pulled its catch close to its torso, which was like a hug you wouldn't be able to escape from. Diplodocus lived 150 million years ago. The 90-foot-long creature was possibly the longest dinosaur ever. Its tail, which could reach 46 feet in length, was the longest tail of any animal ever. And its neck was more than 20 feet long. The underside of the dino's tail had 2 rows of bones, which made the creature even stronger and more mobile. Diplodocus didn't look scary, long-necked, gentle, peacefully munching on plants, until it used its tail like a whip, making even the scariest meat-eaters back away. This tail was the center of the dino's mass, which was why Diplodocus could move very quickly. Scientists first thought, this is a lizard-like animal, but its posture was more like that of an elephant. Plus, Diplodocus had nasal openings on its forehead. The dino's weakness was its small teeth and weak force bite. Quetzalcoatlus was the biggest flying animal ever. It lived 70 million years ago and controlled the skies of North America. It was a toothy, pin-headed creature with a blunt snout. It was as tall as a giraffe and weighed 550 pounds. Quetzalcoatlus had a small torso and long neck and legs. Its wings were short compared to the rest of its body, but still long enough to stretch for 40 feet. Scientists think this animal could fly at a speed of up to 80 miles per hour and travel 400 miles in a day. This dino was weaker than, let's say, T-Rex or most other carnivores of that time, but it had powerful muscles, which helped the animal rise into the air in the blink of an eye.
Big herds of dinosaurs run through the forest. The temperature rises rapidly, and everything behind them begins to ignite. Some dinosaurs get stuck in swamps and can't get out. Pterodactyls fly over their heads as they try to avoid the blast wave that will soon cover the Earth. This event happened about 66 million years ago. It wiped out almost every living thing on Earth. Birds and flying dinosaurs were just about the only ones who could survive the most massive extinction event ever. Hey, don't blame me, I wasn't around then. Let's go down their evolutionary tree to look at the world's first bird, Archaeopteryx. It was about the size of a modern raven, but it looked like a small dinosaur with feathers. It had many small conical teeth, almost like alligators. It's because Archaeopteryx was closer to reptiles than to birds. However, its brain was 3 times larger than that of these reptiles. Although it had wings with feathers, it could hardly fly like modern birds. Its shoulder joints didn't allow it to lift its wings above its back, so it couldn't make a full wing beat. Most likely, Archaeopteryx was capable of gliding flights with small wing flaps. Evolution has led to more evolved species capable of full flight. Pterodactyls. These guys had no feathers, but membranes made of skin and muscle. Its wingspan was about the length of a human leg. It could fly perfectly and catch fish and small animals. Although flying dinosaurs could easily outrun terrestrial predators like velociraptors and T-Rexes, most of them didn't make it through the impact of a giant meteorite. Let's look at this event step by step to see how they got to our time. 10 minutes before the meteorite crash. A massive rock about the size of Manhattan Island is moving towards Earth in space. It weighs 460 trillion tons. That's like 3 trillion blue whales, the heaviest mammals that ever lived on Earth, and it's approaching our planet at 12 miles per second. At that speed, it could cross the Atlantic Ocean in just 4.5 minutes. That's twice as fast as our modern spacecraft could fly. 5 seconds before the meteorite crash. Ooh, this is getting tense. The Earth's gravitational force continues to pull the giant meteorite. It blows a hole in our atmosphere and creates a popping sound so loud you could hear it on the other side of our planet. All the animals on our planet wake up in a panic. They lift their heads up and see a huge rock that begins to burn through the air. Smaller fragments start to break away from the main meteorite. This fire is so bright that it shines almost like the sun. Flying dinosaurs and other ancestors of modern birds are the first to sense danger. They make a beeline to the sky and try to fly as far away from the impact site as possible to save their lives. The moment of impact. The colossal mass and velocity of the meteorite give it an enormous amount of energy. As soon as it touches the Earth, it causes an explosion of 150 trillion tons of TNT. The blast wave literally rips out chunks of our planet and throws them up. A huge wall of energy begins to move from the point of impact in all directions. It snatches the trees out with their roots and pushes them to the ground like dominoes. The shockwave completely wraps around our planet. This energy turns into heat. Everything around the impact site begins to ignite. Green jungles and trees turn into smoldering charcoal in seconds. The ground and rocks simply evaporate. The collision caused a massive earthquake. Some dinosaurs may have fallen into cracks that appeared in the ground. A strong earthquake caused a tsunami, with waves higher than the Empire State Building. Dinosaurs that weren't trapped in the burning forest were washed away by the enormous waves. The dinosaurs of North America tried to escape by running to the north, but the blast wave inevitably catches up with them. Flying dinosaurs have no problem with earthquakes or tsunamis. They fly high enough to avoid the giant waves, but they will have to contend with continuously falling meteorite debris. 5 minutes after the meteorite crash, a meteor shower of giant rock fragments continues to fall to Earth. Some meteorites were the size of a car, others were more like a large building. Ashes and dust rise into the air. Their temperature is so high that they melt and turn into liquid lava and then fall back to Earth, causing more fires. Meteor showers cause trouble for flying dinosaurs too. They have to maneuver and dodge the falling red-hot rocks. The high temperatures are a huge problem for them because it might make them lose feathers. With no feathers, they aren't able to fly. 10 hours after the meteorite crash. The dinosaurs continuously ran north all this time. They found themselves in unfamiliar territory with many swamps. Giant dinosaurs like T-Rexes have legs as long as an adult human's height. They have a chance to get through this terrain, but if they fell, they could never get back up. The smaller dinosaurs like Triceratops had short legs and couldn't go through the dense swamps. 1 month after the meteorite crash, 15 trillion tons of ash were ejected into our atmosphere. A dark cloud blocked the sun, and the Earth was immersed in complete darkness. Surviving plants couldn't feed on the sun's energy and stopped producing oxygen. Surviving dinosaurs could hardly breathe because of the lack of air and a large amount of dust. The lack of sunshine in the sky made phytoplankton disappear. Many marine animals were left without their only source of food. The dust and ashes in the atmosphere prevent our planet from getting heat from the sun, and the temperature here is beginning to drop. The place where the meteorite fell was rich in sulfur. This toxic acid evaporated at the time of the impact and formed in clouds. Now there are acid rains on Earth. Flying dinosaurs now have to hide from these rains. They have to stay in caves and can't go outside to get some food. So far, a large number of terrestrial and flying dinosaurs have survived. They come out to see the aftermath of the disaster. The site of the impact was in present-day Mexico, the Yucatan Peninsula. The Chicxulub crater is located here. It's about 93 miles wide, like half of all of Lake Michigan, and it's 12 miles deep. You could plunge the whole Mount Everest in there, and there would still be 6.5 miles of available space. It wasn't the impact itself that made the dinosaurs disappear. The fire destroyed most of the plants the herbivorous dinosaurs ate. With no food, their numbers dwindled rapidly. Predatory dinosaurs had nothing to eat either. Acid rain and the disappearance of phytoplankton threatened all marine life. Even though birds managed to avoid the blast waves and tsunami, they were short of food too. About 80% of all birds didn't make it to the end of the extinction event. The problem was that all of the forests on Earth were wiped out. Most birds would nest and live in trees. Besides that, the forests were always full of food, from all kinds of ants and termites to flying insects and small mice. So, only those species that lived on the ground and could fly well survived. Most likely, they fed on the seeds of small surviving plants. This habit made flying dinosaurs lose their teeth during evolution. Instead of jaws with a bunch of sharp teeth, they got long beaks to grab tiny seeds from the ground. Although Earth looks like a terrible place to live now, there's an evolutionary boom for birds. They have to travel long distances in search of food. Their wings get stronger. They also feel safe from predators who regarded them as food before. No T-Rex now catches a sleeping bird off guard. About 1,000 years after the collision, the first dense forests appear. It gives another boost to evolution. 1 million years later, forests full of food are populated by the ancestors of modern mouse birds. And 65 million years later, in modern times, we have about 10,000 species of birds. Pigeons, crows, eagles, and hawks, even penguins. These are all descendants of the dinosaurs. But there were other survivors. Some alligator and crocodile ancestors were able to adapt to changing conditions. About 80% of turtle species managed to survive the mass extinction, and now their descendants live among us. Snakes and lizards were also able to wait out the hard times in their burrows. Even some mammals, like monotremes, survived. This hedgehog-sized animal was able to continue to evolve. Many millions of years later, these mammals evolved into primates, which later gave life to modern humans. Much, much later came the iPhone. So your starship is flying through space at 99.9% of the speed of light. Hey, aren't you cool? The stars turn into bright, continuous lines. Infinite outer space has shrunk into a tunnel. A bright flash ahead. Boom! Starship shoots out of the tunnel like a cork. You see the ancient Earth. The computer says you went back 70 million years. You're a paleontologist of the future who traveled through time for one purpose – to see with your own eyes the most underappreciated dinosaur in history. You have come down to Earth and are walking through the jungle. Suddenly, you hear a mighty roar. There's a dinosaur coming out of the trees. It's more than twice your height and weighs as much as 4 cars. Scientists have found only 2 huge arms left of this dino. For 60 years, Dinosaurus has been a major mystery in paleontology. Now we can see this creature in its entirety. They managed to find a complete set of fossils in Mongolia. Translated from Latin, the name of this dinosaur means terrible hand. Apparently, this dino was lousy at playing poker. Dinosaurus is an animal cocktail that nature is prepared to make you both shriek and laugh. Let's take a look at it from the point of view of the evolution itself. First, we take the T-Rex. Dinosaurus and the king of the dinosaurs are about the same size. From the T-Rex, we'll only leave the powerful hind legs and the long tail. Instead of small forelimbs, we'll attach mighty 8-feet-long arms. And let's not forget about the fingers with razor-sharp claws. Each claw is as long as a kitchen knife. Then we add a hump like a camel's, a neck like an ostrich's, and a horse's head. And instead of a toothy mouth, we put a duckbill. Now our Dinosaurus is ready. It also has long and sharp claws on its flat feet. Such broad soles help it walk along the river bottom and not sink into the silt. Most scientists believe it was covered in feathers too. Plants were the main dish on this dinosaur's menu. To digest plant food, Dinosaurus swallowed stones. Many modern birds do the same. Stones in the stomach grind the tough plant fibers. In one of the Dinosauruses, scientists found 1,400 of those. Yes, this dino had a huge belly, which slowed it down a lot. With such a size, Dinosaurus lived for a very long time, 75 to 300 years, give or take. In a 100-million-year-old piece of amber, they found strange bones. They belong to the smallest dinosaur known to science. Take 2 paper bills from your wallet. This dino weighed the same. It was about the size of a modern hummingbird. Scientists don't know what the tiny dinosaur looked like more, a lizard or a bird, but they're pretty sure it could fly and hunted insects. Over 100 sharp teeth confirm that. What happens when you cross a chicken and a crocodile? You get one of these bad guys, a Hesperonychus. This dinosaur was small but had quite an attitude. It lived in North America and probably hunted mammals. It weighed only 4 pounds and was covered in feathers like a chicken. If the sloth was a dinosaur, it would look like a Suzhou lizard. It moved on 2 legs, was as tall as a modern giraffe, but weighed 3 times as much. Suzhou lizard had feathers on its body, and a long neck helped it look in all directions. Overall, the tail of this dinosaur made it look like a giant rat on 2 legs. When scientists first saw the fossils of this animal, they didn't believe they were real. The Hulscaraptor looks like a hybrid of a velociraptor and an ostrich, only this dino was the size of a goose. The creature's strong hind limbs confirmed that it could walk on land. The dinosaur hunted fish, diving underwater for its prey. Now, we're used to flying animals having 2 wings, but evolution loves to break the rules. The Microraptor had 4 wings. Strong feathers were attached to each of those. The dinosaur weighed no more than 2 pounds. Its feathers were black and shiny like a crow's. There are no birds on the planet that have 4 wings. That means they evolved from 2-winged dinosaurs. Microraptor was the dead-end branch of evolution that didn't give way to any new species of animals. It seems that this hard-to-pronounce guy, I'll give it a shot, Tanystrophus, was a dinosaur drawn for a cartoon. But it existed in reality and lived in the water. It weighed 300 pounds and was 20 feet long. Half of its body was a flexible neck the size of a green anaconda. Scientists don't know why the creature had such a long neck. Most likely the dinosaur used it to catch fish or play jump rope. Imagine that 66 million years ago, I wasn't around then, an asteroid didn't crash into our planet. The dinosaurs didn't disappear, and the mammals failed to dominate the Earth. This means the primates didn't evolve and remained in the trees. Who would have taken the place of primates in such a world? Many scientists believe it could be Troodon. The dinosaur had the largest brain relative to body size. It walked on two legs and was about the size of a human. Hypothetically, Troodon could evolve and become as intelligent as we humans are now. By the way, the smallest brain relative to body size belongs to Stegosaurus. It was the largest of the armored dinos. It was a plant eater, but its powerful tail and sharp spikes were feared by all hunters of the age. A Stegosaurus weighed almost 4 tons, but its brain was meh, not much larger than a hot dog. Pegomastax was no bigger than a domestic cat, and it ran wild and free in Africa 100 to 200 million years ago. Imagine a bipedal lizard that looks like a parrot. Pegomastax was covered both with feathers and porcupine-like quills. It had a beak, but 2 sharp fangs grew from the lower jaw. Still, the creature's scary appearance is deceiving. The dino ran fast and could bite hard, but it was a peaceful plant eater all the same. Now, this one, Linhenicus, lived 80 million years ago. It resembled an ostrich that weighed like a medium-sized parrot. It could run quickly and hunted insects. Instead of arms, this dinosaur grew 2 tiny fingers with claws on their ends. It's the only one-fingered dinosaur known to science. This strange creature was one of the ancestors of modern birds. Jeholopterus was a flying dinosaur, looking as if it came straight from a sci-fi movie. It looked like a cat with bat wings. The creature was feeding on insects, but there's another theory that it could feed like a mosquito. This dino landed on the backs of large dinosaurs and pierced their thick skin with sharp fangs. Now, this is a fairy tale unicorn. It's as white as snow, beautiful and graceful. And this is a Qingdao lizard, the real-life prototype of that horned horse. A bony horn more than 15 inches long grew on its head. Perhaps the horn helped float in the water, attract partners, or make different sounds. The fairy tale unicorn is definitely cuter than this prehistoric creature. Our next guy, Inostrancevia, resembled a cross between a lizard and a tiger. Imagine an animal that weighs as much as 5 wild boars, with the body length of a sedan. Limbs with sharp claws, fangs similar to those of a saber-toothed tiger, and powerful jaws. It was one of the most dangerous animals that roamed the planet Earth. It occupied a niche that today belongs to lions, tigers, and other large cats. Next, please. Epidexiturus. Now, this is a small dinosaur about the size of a pigeon. It couldn't fly, but it was one of the first dinos with feathers. They were different from those of modern birds, though. They weren't divided into separate threads, but were whole and resembled plant leaves. This big guy, Therizinosaurus, isn't only known for its strange appearance and size, although it was as tall as a 5-story building and weighed like an elephant. The giant was notorious for the largest claws on the planet. It was really a manicurist's nightmare. 2-inch-long scythes protruded from its fingers. Despite those horrific appendages, it ate plant food, chewing it with its small teeth. The humongous jaws were needed to pull leaves off of tall trees. Ouch! Hey, I'm growing here! Meet the largest animal that flew in the earthly sky, Quetzalcoatlus. Just imagine a creature with a wingspan almost the width of a basketball court. To lift such a machine, it needed to be lightweight, so it only weighed as much as a modern pig, with its wings looking like a thin membrane. They stretched from the bottom of the legs to the elongated fingers. Artists often depict this creature covered in feathers, but its body was actually coated with fibers similar to human and animal hair. Acrotholus is an unusual dinosaur that wore a cap made of hard bone. No, not a baseball cap. The creature was the size of a Labrador retriever dog, but not as friendly. It wouldn't run after a stick. Rather, it would rush and ram its hard head into the rival of the same species or a predator.
Are you sure that it was an asteroid that caused the extinction of dinosaurs? There's this huge drama about why these horrifying creatures disappeared. It's a big deal in both science and movies. But what really happened to the dinos? How do scientists figure it out? And why does it even matter? Let's see. Let's take a trip back to England in 1842. There was a scientist named Sir Richard Owen. He was checking out some huge reptile fossils and noticed that 3 of them Megalosaurus, Iguanodon, and Hylaeosaurus had a lot in common. So he had this light bulb moment and decided to combine all these creatures into Dinosauria, which means terrible lizards in Greek. The scientists were studying dinosaurs and grouping them based on their looks. But then, Charles Darwin showed up and gave even a better idea. Turns out, species don't just appear out of thin air, they evolve. And now, everyone had to rethink how they were defining dinosaurs. They came up with a new idea called phylogenetic classification. Picture a big family tree with all creatures ever. Somewhere up there, we find Megalosaurus and Iguanodon. And we say all dino descendants come from their common ancestor. It's like tracing back your family tree, and if we go far enough, we find the ultimate dino ancestor. Sounds like a plan. But then, things got a bit complicated. When we talk about dinos, we've got the ones with feathers and beaks and the ones without. That's when we found out that birds are cousins to certain dinosaurs, maybe even evolved from them. After learning that, scientists had to look at the bird family tree and rethink the dino definition. In the end, they decided that birds are kinda dinosaurs, but not exactly. Confusing, huh? But in any case, now we have two groups. The first one is birds, and the other one is non-avian dinosaurs, which are extinct. That means now we have to reconsider our question. Instead of asking what caused the extinction of dinosaurs, it should be what caused the extinction of non-bird dinos. The answer might seem simple. People often think of a gigantic space rock as the dino destroyer. It's probably the first thing that pops into your mind. Even Google and other search engines agree on this one, like best friends copying each other's homework. History teaches us that about 66 million years ago, dinosaurs totally vanished, except for the ones that became birds. Of course, the truth is more complicated. And not all dinos vanished in one go. Some went the natural way, and there were many extinctions here and there during their time on Earth. But the big event we're talking about looks like a movie scene change. Like suddenly changing the channel on a TV. One poof. And the Earth went from the time of dinosaurs to the time of mammals. Scientists call these time periods the Cretaceous and Paleogen. We even give this special event a nickname, the KPG, or KT Extinction. Some even refer to it as the 65 million years ago event, even though the more correct number is 66 million years ago. We've got two main theories in the spotlight: asteroids crashing and volcanoes erupting like crazy. Let's talk about the asteroid idea. So, around 66 million years back, imagine a humongous asteroid smacking into Earth. This thing was about 6 miles wide, about as big as Mount Everest. It zoomed through the sky super fast, like a mountain going 100 times the speed of sound. And when it hit, it released a ton of energy. It crashed down in what's now southern Mexico, near a spot that's tied to the dinosaur extinction story, Chicxulub Crater. Everything close to the impact was zapped into vapor in a snap. Picture the biggest energy burst in ages, like 1 billion years or more. Nothing near the crash site stood a chance. Next, there was the aftershock. As the fireball cooled down, the Earth's surface went bonkers. The ground twisted and shook, causing unimaginable earthquakes. The continents became huge, bouncy castles. And then, the stuff that got blasted up by the impact came raining back down like a rainstorm. Even if you weren't near the huge pieces falling in Mexico, you'd get hit by these smaller, super hot bits flying through the air. This made the air so toasty that forests burst into flames all around the world. Are you ready for more? Time for a massive tsunami. The ocean floor got all churned up, pushing waves inland around the Gulf of Mexico. But just imagine, even all that wasn't enough to destroy all the dinosaurs. For example, dinos in New Zealand were pretty fine, but we know that they all went extinct. So what happened to them? They felt a little rumble, and suddenly, the sky started getting all dark and gloomy, as if it was nighttime. And hold up, what's that? A blanket of ash is slowly creeping around the whole planet. Now, here's where the real drama happens. The big problem with the asteroid crash wasn't the instant boom you might think. It's all about the long-term effects. Imagine the stuff that got blasted up into the sky blocking the sunlight. Days turn into nights, and temperatures drop very sharply. A lot of plant-eating dinosaurs passed away, and hunters were having a great feast, but not for too long. Without sunshine, the food chain falls apart very quickly. Then, the ash falls back to Earth. Things go from bad to worse. Other nasty stuff starts floating around in the air like carbon dioxide. This carbon dioxide mixed with shattered seafloor bits makes the temperature go wild. The Earth was playing hot and cold all at once. That's when somewhere between 50 and 80% of dinosaurs said goodbye forever. What's even more sad is that this number only counts the species themselves. If we look at the number of individual animal lives lost, it's even higher. You might think that at least the poor mammals finally got their chance after the dinos left. But even mammals had a tough time. We are very lucky that a few brave mammals managed to survive this crazy chaos. The ones who made it were like the little champs with speedy energy systems, flexible diets, or secret hideouts. But this story is only one hypothesis. Next, we have the volcanism hypothesis. Volcanoes. These fiery mountains are used to spitting out molten rock and causing epic destruction. But surprisingly, this theory isn't about explosive eruptions. Nope. It's about something sneakier and slower. Around 1 million years before the Dino Doom, there's this big change happening under the Earth's surface. Way below where India's floating, a rock river starts forming, heating things up. And then, India gets hit hard. It turns into a sea of lava, like a fiery ocean. It's like a gazillion of dump trucks filled with lava slowly pouring out. These solidified leftovers are known as the Deccan Traps, like a super deep layer of hard lava covering a piece of land the size of France. And just like in our asteroid story, the real trouble comes from the air. For hundreds of thousands of years, sulfur dioxide spread like an unstoppable shadow. It was making the sky gloomy and the rain toxic. Food sources turned into poison, and oceans became acid baths. And then, carbon dioxide took the stage. It was like a temperature button, flipping the Earth's climate upside down. It was a roller coaster of chaos. The ecosystems were stressed, food chains snapped, and species waved goodbye one by one. Both theories seemed pretty realistic. All the experts were having a big debate about which theory was correct and why the dinos disappeared. So, what is the real answer? Unfortunately, we don't know. Some scientists support one theory, some support the other one, and we're left scratching our heads. But hey, don't be too hard on the media or the scientists. They're all doing their best to figure out the mystery of the dinosaurs' disappearance. And maybe one day, we'll finally learn the real answer. So, stay tuned.